I think you should try it. Oh, this is great.
Definitely a cult phenomenon.
You know what I think?
It just hits you in the
yeah.
face. Well, recording is now in progress.
Blood and go.
I realize I like paint.
That was a botch. I'm blending. Hold on.
So, anyway, thanks for tuning in. We're talking about wrestling.
I'm talking to the potatoes.
That's how it's gonna go.
Grand Slam yesterday, Wednesday, whatever that day was, September 21st, 2022. This big event. Lot of expectations leading up to it. Right? This is following All Out and all the crazy fallout from All Out. And then what's happening with AEW? And then Jon Moxley does a promo that Wednesday and makes everybody feel like, oh, AEW is going to be fine. And they get a huge rating and we're all excited. And then the following Wednesday is like, and then we get Grand Slam. This is what's all leading up to. Everybody's excited. Huge crowd. Great crowd. Maybe the best crowd I've ever seen with AEW. Massive amounts of energy.
Yeah, ever.
I was telling you earlier, it reminded me of like the old school crowd from like the Attitude Era, where there was just a constant buzz. You know, I mean, you used to see like even before that, you'd see like just two wrestlers would get in the ring, Roddy Piper and Sergeant Slaughter or something. They wouldn't even do anything, and the crowd was just like going the whole time before anything happened. It was just this constant energy off the crowd. This felt like that.
That's what I said about what the singing, where when Jericho first came out, he even felt it. He felt the actual crowd of them singing so loud of his song. And like, he actually, like I said before, he kept on putting his hand to his ear saying, oh my God, because he felt it. He saw that everyone from 70 years old to 16 years old was singing his goddamn song to the top of his lungs. So it's gotta be cool, kind of cool to hear that.
Oh yeah. And I was excited. I turned it on. I sat down on the couch. I was like, yes, this is exactly what I want right now. This is great. I feel the energy. And then for me, the energy just waned slowly throughout the episode, that by the time the episode was over, I was like, that was okay. You know, like it wasn't bad. I enjoyed it, but like for the hype and expectations and the energy you got in the beginning, it didn't last through the whole episode. And I don't know, like we talked about a lot recently, how important it is to get that momentum from the beginning. You start off strong, you create a certain atmosphere, and that could keep the show going on that same energy level. But I think we may be contradicting ourselves now. Like, it didn't for me. It started off with this huge amount of energy and just went down and down and down.
Yeah.
And maybe it wasn't even, you know what? Maybe we're not contradicting ourselves. Maybe it didn't start off as strong as we're talking about, but the energy from the beginning was the anticipation, not the actual performance, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I said this before. I feel like because we didn't watch it together, I felt like we didn't pump each other up too. So I felt like there was a little difference too when like we watched it together, and like if we heard Jericho come out and the crowd was singing, that itself, we would punch each other, like we would boost each other up saying, oh my God, this is amazing, blah, blah, blah. So because of us feeding off each other, we probably would have liked a lot of the stuff more if we watched it again together.
We might, but everything that I've heard and read is like, kind of like, yeah, it was okay. Like I read, you know, I saw some grades today and it was like B minus matches. Like everything was kind of B minus.
I feel like the matches itself wasn't so great. Like I feel like Acclaim getting the due, they should have got it at the pay-per-view because it just wasn't the same exact match. It wasn't the same exact energy that they had. I will say that Cassidy was amazing. He always gets a fucking this is awesome chance. Every match he does, they always say this is awesome, but they still won't sit there and give him his due. He still loses, and he still won't. Like, I really, even though as much Pac is good, I think he should have lost the belt, and the crowd would have went fucking nuts. I
just don't think they needed to have that match. Well, okay. I know what they were doing. They're trying to not recreate, but like they're trying to get that energy of the past matches that they've had, which were great, which were just like, I think we talked about it before. Like one of my favorite matches ever is that first match they did like 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago now. And this didn't have that. It was still a really good match. But maybe this match didn't need to happen. Like maybe, okay, let me circle back a little bit. We talked about like what this show was missing. Maybe the thing that was missing was we didn't have enough originals and, you know, AEW homegrown talent on the show going over, or really being showcased in general, right? You were saying it was bookended by 2 ex-WWE guys in the first match, 2 ex-WWE guys in the last match, the 2 big main events and individual title matches. And they were both good matches. But I really think the excitement behind AEW, everything, when you think about what made AEW so exciting from the beginning is that it was new. What can happen next? We feel like I think, and I'm saying we AEW fans, people who were there from the beginning in anticipation of this new thing, this alternative, we were there growing with it, and we want to see the fruits of that, right? We want what started growing 2.5, 3 years ago. We want to start seeing the fruits of that growth. And I think there wasn't enough of that in this pay-per-view. You had Orange there, sure, but he didn't win. Pac is an original guy, but again, it's a WWE guy,
but listen,
not a homegrown guy.
It wasn't even a pay-per-view though.
It's true, but it was treated like a bigger show than the last pay-per-view.
It was, but it wasn't a pay-per-view. But like that's huge to me because I feel like they do treat their regular shows more than the pay-per-view. And I get what you're saying, but at the same time, you got to think that people like Mox is having probably the time of his life way more than AEW than WWE. Sorry, people like Brian, they wouldn't even clear Brian. The biggest pop was fucking when Paige came out.
Yeah,
and I don't know, she's not going by Paige, but still, but. When she came out, it was like the biggest pop I heard since Punk. And I understand you don't really like Paige that much, but at the same time, that fucking pop was huge. Yeah. So that's going to be talked about a lot, is because it's WWE had this whole thing where we're not going to clear these people. We're just going to fucking, they did that with Sting. They did it with Daniel Bryan. They did that with Paige. They did it, you know, so now the fact that she's able to hear, it was such a huge pop that it totally overshadowed a lot because I haven't heard the crowd go nuts like that with anyone. They claim, again, the crowd went nuts. I just thought that it was a little flat.
No, the Acclaimed is exactly, I mean, I think you were right. Like it was a good match and the fans got what they wanted. The Acclaimed getting the belts, but 100%. They should have pulled the trigger on that last time. Like the idea of delayed satisfaction doesn't work in wrestling. I really don't think it works. This ending was not nearly as satisfying as it would have been if they got the belts the first time against Swerve. And again, I enjoyed the match. It was a decent match, but like, it was almost too little too late, you know? And so you had 2 circling back again, 2 like homegrown originals. Well, Acclaim weren't there from the beginning, but just about going on the show. One went over, but it was kind of like, you know, could have been better. And the other was Orange, who didn't win. Pac is a day one original, but not a homegrown person. And somebody that they want, that the crowd really does want to see get a push, but like, I think the crowd wants to see Orange win a goddamn match sometime.
Yes.
So put them both on the show, but put them in different matches that one of them, that they both can go over.
Yeah. I think because Pac, I said this before, I said this actually to my friend Drew. I said, he didn't want Cassidy to win because he doesn't see the whole vision of Cassidy. But it's like, the guy can wrestle. The guy can do his shit. And every match he does, the crowd always says this is awesome, no matter what match he's in. So with that being said, he deserves his due. He deserves to get his win. He deserves to get a belt or something. Don't put him in a match, like you said, where we know for a fact he's going to lose. And I think that's the most disappointing thing about the whole Wednesday, is that we pretty much knew, besides the last match, of all the outcome. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we knew the outcome of every single match, and that's normally disappointing when you know. Like, when you know for a fact that Acclaim was going to win because they were going to fix their fucking issues from the last pay-per-view. We know for a fact that Jericho was going to win because of all the rumors and this and that. Yeah. We knew. You know what I'm saying? Like, so we knew that Tony Storm was going to win. All these things. So when you know for a fact that every match was going to be the result, it's kind of just disappointing. Like, okay, they couldn't do anything. There was no, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I get what you're saying. I still thought it was good. I still do believe, though, that if we watched it together, we probably would be as disappointed. Yeah.
And I agree. It was good. And somebody I heard described it as a 5-star card that was a 4-star show. So, like, you know, I think that sums up what we're saying. Like, 4-star show is still really good, but it should have been a 5-star show.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
And I think, you know, you're talking about like all those matches where the outcomes are predictable. I think maybe what they need to do is, like, I don't know, find out who's coaching the matches in New Japan and bring them over. You got Kenny Omega who speaks Japanese. You can translate. Like, one thing that New Japan does great is it doesn't matter what the match is. They can always make it feel like it can be Okada versus, you know, a mid-card, low-level mid-card person. I don't know, Yoshihashi, who I don't know if you know who that is. It doesn't matter. Maybe not knowing who that is makes my point. By the end of that match, they managed to create a match that you are thinking like, wow, Yoshihashi might win. AEW doesn't seem to be able to do that, where the predictable matches are predictable to the end. You know, like, you know, Okada is not going to lose to Yoshihashi, but somehow they create a match where you're like, maybe he is. Is it possible? And AEW doesn't do that as much as I think they need to, if they're going to do so many predictable matches on one card, you know?
And it's sad because, like I said, I'm with you, where I think it was actually a really good show. I thought it was a really good show. I thought it was actually a good show that it's been for a while. I'm sure it fucking had really good ratings. But again, it came back to when I originally told us that when our expectations are high, it seems to always disappoint. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because when you see the card, you're like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. And like, when I first saw the first match, I was really excited. And then, kind of like you, I enjoyed it, but it just wasn't the same. And I do think that it had a lot to do with the fact that we weren't texting each other and saying, oh my God, did you see that? Because that has a lot to play. But I also think that it's like, after a while, you're like, well, every single outcome I thought of happened, you know, besides the last match. I actually thought Bryan was going to win, but I'm not mad that Max won, but I actually thought Bryan was going to. So other than that, though, every match I actually knew.
I want to talk about the Bryan thing in a minute, but another thing was not just that every match was predictable. Another thing I think that took away from it is, like, were there 3 matches? At least 3 matches. And maybe it was the first 3 matches that all didn't have clean endings. They had cheating, or like, there was Pac hit Orange with.
I don't understand that. Yeah.
Which, why? He's a baby face. And why you're doing that? And why take somebody like Pac, who's a legit good wrestler, to have to cheat? It just doesn't work. It didn't work.
What did Jericho cheat?
Jericho, yeah. There was a low blow, wasn't there?
I don't remember, to be honest with you.
Jericho had a low blow, which that was fine. And it was the first match. And I'm like, that works for me, especially in the context of like Jericho's kind of character is like his character is a cheater, basically, right? Sports entertainer. He gets away with a lot with the sports entertainer moniker. And Cesaro is like the technical wrestler. So that kind of works for me because, like, you know, it could be argued that Claudio,
Yeah.
you know, is the better wrestler on paper, especially at Jericho's age. But then, you had the Pac one, which is like, he's a babyface. Why is he doing that? And the Acclaimed match where Billy Gunn did the Famouser on Swerve and then threw him back in the ring. Those guys are huge baby faces. Why are they getting a cheap win? That's another reason why I think that, and it didn't feel unnatural. Like watching it, I didn't think like, oh man, this is out of nowhere. But I think if they won clean, it would have meant more, you know? Mm-hmm. And I don't think it would have buried Swerve or Keith Lee.
To be fair, the crowd did like still pop for when they claimed one. I mean, they actually popped when Billy Gunn did the Famouser. So, you know, it works because at least it shows that like he was there for a reason. But I get what you're saying. That it just seems like it's a little too much. Again, my whole thing was, the Acclaim one was the big thing about it. And obviously Paige coming out, and I'm hoping that she does good for the back scene and maybe get more viewerships, because the women division needs help all they can get. But I do think Friday is going to be, and I don't want to say it because like I always, every time I have high hopes, but I feel like Friday is the one that has more of the OG AEW people.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Friday.
It's I do think it's too late. I do think because it's already been. I'm sure we could find the fucking results already, but you got to think to yourself, if they recorded it after Dynamite, so that means 8 to 10 was Dynamite, and whatever they got off stage was like 10:30 or whatever. If they have a 2-hour show of Rampage, that means that shit's going on till 12:30, 1 o'clock. I wouldn't doubt that half the people left for the last. I don't know what the last match is, but half the people left. I wouldn't doubt.
It's in the middle of New York City. It's not like out in the suburbs somewhere where everybody's driving there. These people are taking the subway home. They know the later it gets, the longer that trip is going to take. You're standing on that subway platform waiting for 15 minutes for the train. Unlike if you leave it, 2 hours earlier, the subways are coming every 10 minutes or so. I don't know, man.
I do think
15 minutes.
I know I do I do know Eddie is playing, which is one of our favorite wrestlers. My prediction with Eddie is that he's actually going to win, but he's going to get disqualified. There's something going to happen where he's going to win the match, but he's going to get disqualified for some strange reason. Because for some reason, they cannot let him fully win, like on card. So I think he's actually going to get the better hand, and something's going to happen where they're going to make it where it goes to Sammy anyway, regardless, even if Eddie wins, because that's how they do it all. Well, think about the pay-per-view when him and Jericho and all that shit, where he actually had Jericho tap out.
Yeah,
but they had the other. They had Claudio win instead. It always ends up being that way.
Oh, hold on, I'm not done with Dynamite. Let's not talk about Friday. There was a number of different things with Dynamite that I was just like shaking my head at. You had mentioned Saraya coming out, and she came out to a huge pop. It was great because it was maybe the most unexpected debut they've ever had.
Ever.
I didn't hear any rumors about it.
Nothing.
No buzz about it at all. And then she just showed up. Now for me, then the crowd pop was huge. For me, I was like, who the fuck is this? Mm. So like it was, and I'm in the minority, obviously people knew, but it made me feel like out of the loop. And I talked about this, like, I think Tony Khan, one of the problems is he relies too much on what everybody knows instead of like telling people. Nobody said who the fuck she was. Yeah. Could have at least, I hear, there's a beatdown. Britt Baker stops and stares at the stage. You have music, and then it says Saraya on the Titantron. I'm like, who the fuck is Saraya? I've never heard her referred to as Saraya. I didn't follow her after WWE, right? So for a minute, I'm just like, what's this big pop? And by the time I'm looking at her, I'm like, I think it's Paige. It kind of looks like her. It's been a few years since I've seen her. she's kind of a generic wrestler looking woman, so it didn't immediately register, but I spent more time like figuring out who she was to really have it be like, oh wow, awesome. So it's like, have some kind of explanation. And they had, I think, 3 people on that show who were just like, hey, here's this person you never heard of. And it was her.
Well, go ahead.
It was the rapper with the Jade Cargill thing, whose name I don't even remember anymore. And Trina. It was supposed to be some kind of joke because of she's a bad bitch, or I don't know what the whole thing is. So, and like that was just awkward and forced. On top of the fact that Trina's supposed to be there on Friday. Why are you doing this now?
Yeah.
It seemed just like, oh, let's just throw her in here because we need some kind of, we need more stars on the A show here. So let's just awkwardly crowbar Trina into this show. And then there was the other rapper, Fabulous, who I never heard of. You knew him. You find him to be like a really talented, underrated, highly regarded performer. But to me, I was just like, legendary New York rapper, Fabulous. And like, I don't know. I could think of 10 legendary New York rappers off the top of my head. I've never heard of this guy.
Like we talked before, there has been going to with the rappers. I understand this seemed a little forced. Fabulous is actually like one of my top 20 rappers of like all time, but it still know hip hop though. Like, to be fair, you know 10 times more about hip hop minimally than 90% of the people watching. Yes, and that's what I was about to say. I was going to say, like, it just seemed a little forceful. It wasn't like West Side Gun coming into Buffalo, because everyone in Buffalo knows West Side Gun because that's huge, and you could tell by the crowd. So I agree with that point. I don't know why they put him there, because it didn't seem like it did mean anything. I don't really know why Trina was there. It just seemed like it's like, hey, we're going to have some clout and just show that we're in, quote unquote. So I do think it was a little ridiculous. The Legendary, I know, is a little iffy, because I know I talked to a couple of my friends like Sakai and Matt, and they all kind of agree that he's in like the top tier. Whatever, but maybe some don't think it Legendary, some do think so, but it just seemed forced. It just seemed like they were trying to force too much into it. And it's like, it didn't really need to. No one fucking in that arena probably knew who Fabulous was. Some knew, don't get me wrong. I guarantee you some knew, but it's not as big as West Side being in Buffalo. So that was a little ridiculous. For Sahara, or what the fuck her name is, Paige, I keep on forgetting.
I think more people knew her than I would have expected.
Yes.
I never heard the name Soraya before. But everybody 90% of the people there seem to know. So I'm in the minority on that. But at the same time, it's like, explain who the fuck this person is.
Yeah. And I get it, but like, you also got to think though, is that you are what's it called? You also too. Hold on a second.
Well, like for me, while you're figuring that out,
no.
Like when like a New Japan guy comes in, I know who it is. When Ishii comes in, I don't need a backstory because I've seen him a million times and I love Ishii and I'm stoked. But I also understand not everybody does. And probably at least half the people watching don't know. Give a backstory. Even the guys that I love, I don't, it's not as poignant because I know who Ishii is. But like when Ospreay came in, Ospreay is such a massive talent and he's such a major star in New Japan. They didn't give really any sort of backstory or any sort of explanation, or like just give a hype package explaining the significance of this guy to the people who don't know. And I would have still enjoyed it, even though I didn't need it. I would have loved to see a hype package on Ospreay before he showed up. Do that. It's all right. You don't need a hype package. Just Excalibur, who knows every fucking thing about everything wrestling that's ever happened in the world. Just be like, Soraya, and she's from this family, and she's been wrestling for the past 15 years. Anything. Any little thing about her.
I get that, but also don't forget when Claudio came in, not too many people know that was his real name. Do you know what I'm saying?
So they knew who he was.
They knew who he was, but a lot of people knew who She was. So
backstory on Claudio have been great. A fucking like a video package would have been great, just showing highlights of him. And okay, can we get over one thing about AEW? Sorry, I'm on one right now.
That's right.
There was when they started was to set themselves apart from WWE. Right, we're not going to do the things that WWE did, and the whole idea of a forbidden door. We're gonna have an open door policy, at least on paper, where we invite in Impact, NWA, New Japan. Please, AEW, can you say the words WWE? Can you acknowledge WWE? Then you can have a lot more backstory to the people who come in from WWE. If you can acknowledge it, everybody knows, but include it now. It's new in this context. So include the WWE context. You can say Saraya, who was from NXT and WWE. It's not like what's the problem? What's going to happen? You think you're going to lose viewers? Like, oh, WWE, I know them. I'm going to watch that instead. What? Why? It's some Vince McMahon bullshit that you're like, it seems to me like playing tit for tat. Like WWE is not going to talk about AEW, so we're not going to talk about them. But you'll talk about Impact, New Japan, and NWA and whoever else, GCW. Just say it. It's awkward and weird that you constantly try to avoid any acknowledgement of WWE. And by you, I mean Rich Carbone. Right there. I know what you're up to. The other thing, though, about Paige to me was like, I'm unfortunately extrapolating into the future. And immediately I think, okay, Paige is here. She's had some weird vibes here and there in the past. I feel like we just had a problem with CM Punk where people felt like they all got pushed down the card because of him showing up out of nowhere. Like the women's division really needs something. And the fans right now, they want to see Chris Statlander. They want to see Jamie Hayter. They want to see those people get a push. They came up slowly in AEW, but they've been there a while. Jamie Hayter was there a couple of years ago, disappeared, came back, with all the pandemic and everything. But the fans love her. And they want to see some AEW homegrown female wrestlers who are really good. And arguably, Jamie Hayter, you could argue, is the best wrestler, maybe side by side with Serena Deeb in the women's division in AEW. So immediately I'm thinking, okay, so Statlander and Hayter just got pushed down the card. Athena, who was also an ex-WWE person, but who's come in and didn't do much. She's kind of the ex-WWE person who was like perfect for AEW, who never really got her due in WWE, comes to AEW, doesn't really get her chance, and now somebody else has already come in and surpassed her immediately. Just by showing up, made that whole match just like, this whole match was here just to show this person showing up. So it kind of diminishes everybody there. And it's another women's match that was just like random. We need to put women on the card. How do we do that? I don't know. Let's just like squeeze a match in there that just random with a random finish and everything about it's random, but Paige will show up. And it didn't mean anything. Athena looked great. Mm-hmm. Britt Baker looked great. And again, Hayter shows up, another run-in. It's just a repeat. It's just a copy paste from the last thing.
Yeah, that was a little ridiculous.
Totally ridiculous.
Yeah, that
was come in and do a save this time? No, she's going to do the same thing. And she talks about how Britt's her best friend. Come on, the crowd wants Jamie Hayter. Do something with her.
I disagreed a little bit with Paige. I talked to you about this before, but because I feel like in the roster that they have of the women division, they really need help. And I think there's only like 3 or 4 people that's actually better than Paige. So it's not really necessarily knocking people down. It's getting more people to view them. It's getting more people to talk about them. Because it will be in the papers. It will be in the news. It will be, you know what I'm saying? Like all the forums and shit.
She brings star power. Absolutely.
Yes, so I'm okay if she doesn't really wrestle that much, as long as that she brings the star power to get them some kind of eyes, because that's what they need.
Yeah, I get that, but I think you're being more generous than me with her. I'm not a fan. I didn't like her in NXT. I didn't like her in WWE. I don't want to see her wrestle. Not that she doesn't have talent, but to me, there's no appeal whatsoever. So to see her show up and push everybody down the card, it's bothersome to me, especially another WWE person coming in and taking the spotlight.
I get that with males, but the female division, there's not a lot of talent that kind of is better than that's not better than her though.
Jamie Hayter, Chris Statlander, Britt Baker.
Britt Baker had a do though. You cannot count her.
No, I know. Serena Deeb. I'm just saying people who I think I'd rather see than her. Athena.
She's an ex-WWE
person, but still, like way. I mean, to me, way more compelling of a character. Willow. I'd rather see Willow.
She's not better than Paige, though.
I don't know.
Yeah, see, I disagree with that. I don't think she's as good as Paige. I think that with the star power, how she gets the crowd. I'm not just talking about just wrestling. I'm just talking about the whole package. Because me, like with Punk, I felt like Punk was overrated.
Right.
I know a lot of people think maybe Paige is overrated, but when you talk about the whole entire picture, she's way more better for them than Willow.
Yeah, I mean,
Willow's not going to get viewerships.
Right. She's more of a mainstream. Saraya is has more mainstream appeal than Willow.
Yeah.
But to me, I don't think that's the average AEW person. I think this is another instance of like going for the mainstream viewer at the expense of the overall product. And they're not getting that mainstream viewer. Like Tony Khan has to give up on trying to get the mainstream viewer. It's not happening. It's never happened. It's been 3 years. They're not getting more ratings.
Yeah.
Keep the people that are there. Make the fans that are there now happy. If you give people what they want, if you have 900,000 fans who are solid fans who have been there from the beginning, if you give them a great show, people who do tune in, who are not part of that 900,000, they're going to see something in it. But if you keep pandering, if you keep trying to force this mainstream thing in, it's always going to feel phony. And to me, it feels like just like a product, which is what people I don't think liked about WWE. AEW felt like something like that we could all get behind. We were all in it together, where now it's starting to feel like a business. And I don't think there's the appeal of watching a business run itself as much as Tony Khan thinks that. I mean, that's not how it's being presented, but that's how it appears to me. I'm watching a business instead of watching something fun.
I would agree with you if it wasn't the female division, because I feel like the female division needed a lot of help.
It did. But it's gotten so much better in the past couple of months.
They still use the same. Don't get me wrong. I think Deeb is definitely way better. I think Deeb needs her due. I think Athena needs her due. Yeah. But because of the viewership, I think that they're not getting their proper time because they know that most people aren't tuning in for that. So,
that's true.
So she will actually come in and actually give them more time so these people can shine.
No, that's a good point. That's a very good point.
So that's why I feel like I'm not mad at her coming in, because if it's going to help people keep the views coming in and keep the viewership staying and sticking with them.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad thing, because people will, now that she's there, people will be like, I want to tune in now with the female division to see what's going on. They wouldn't do that with Athena. She's definitely more popular than Athena, even though I think Athena is way more talented. She's definitely not more popular than
No,
page.
true. That's true.
So I think that this is actually really good for them for the female division to soar into a different way and have them more
Soar.
Yes, soar into more.
Wow. That's some lofty language right there.
But you know what I mean. So that's
I know what you mean. They're soaring like eagles.
But that's my whole intake with her, because of the simple fact that I feel that she'll do more good than damage is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And one last thing is we're running out of time. All the matches were good. I would have liked to see Bryan win instead of Moxley, even though I'm a big Moxley fan. I think it's Bryan's time. This is the time to give him the belt. I don't know at what point they're planning on giving him the belt. Maybe he didn't want the belt. Right now, like
That's
Moxley
true.
is the
That's
one who's
true.
carrying the promotion on his shoulders. And maybe Bryan's like, listen, I don't need that responsibility. And I don't want to try to like step in between Moxley and that responsibility, because it just naturally seems to have gone to him. But to me, it was his time, and I don't know when his time is going to feel right again. And he has to get it. And he's, of all the top guys, talking about him, MJF, we can put CM Punk in this category. He's the one that seems to be like the most vulnerable in terms of like, he actually has lost a bunch of matches.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He needs, I think, at some point, a boost. He needs to be, his legacy with AEW needs to be as like a superstar champion who was like undeniable. And he's not quite there because of his record.
Well, I think part of it is that I feel like he doesn't care if he puts over other people.
No,
I do think I do think he's due, but I also think maybe they wanted to make sure, because maybe MGF, they have a plan that MGF is going to take it anyway. So maybe they didn't want, when Bryan finally gets his shot, it would be a short term, because the other pay-per-view is only a few weeks away. So maybe they just wanted to say, okay, well, if MGF is going to win it somehow, dirty or whatever, they didn't want Bryan to come in, win it, and then also lose it in like a month.
Yeah. I also feel like the promos between MJF and Bryan would be better. Bryan is good at being like snarky, where Moxley is more just like tough guy. I feel like Bryan would have been good. But anyway, we're running out of time. Oh man.
Yeah,
this was we had so much to talk about.
I kind of think that we should do this over.
You think we should do it over?
Yes.
Okay.